have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Shailesh Gandhi, the the chief guest, as well as the person we are all eagerly waiting to hear from, and as well as ask questions to. Mr. Gandhi is a civil engineer from IIT Bombay. He's a first-generation entrepreneur, and he set up a company called Clear Plastics Limited, which ran for several decades. In the late 1990s, he began to devote a considerable amount of time on his own for civic issues. In 2003, he sold Clear Plastics after running it for almost 23 years in order to devote his life completely to social work.
Sucheta told me that about 50% of this audience is probably government servants. So there are probably two sides. Government servants, the providers of information, and the other citizens, the seekers of information. And quite often when I do workshops for public information officers or talk to them, they believe there are two sides. People in fact ask me, they say, Mr. Gandhi, how do you feel being on the other side? From being a citizen activist to an information commissioner. Let me put a simple proposition to my friends who are from government service. In a week of 168 hours, you are a government servant, even if you are a very hard-working government servant, for usually not more than 55 hours. That's about 32% of the time you are a government servant. Even if you are a director in a bank, you go out and the roads are bad, you suffer just like the citizen does. If the air quality is bad, you will suffer. If the green cover goes, you are in the same boat as anyone else. So my submission is you are about 32% stake as a government servant and the rest as a citizen. Let's take one more step. In an average lifespan of about 75 years, you are a government servant for about half the time. The rest, you are like any other citizen. You retire and get out, you will suffer exactly like any other citizen does. And therefore this 32% I would submit comes down to 16%. 16% is your stake as a government servant, the balance as a citizen. And just one more step. In an average family of 4, usually only one person will be a government servant, the other 3 will not. But to all of us, what happens to our spouse, our child, our parent is in fact at times more important than what happens to us. So therefore my submission is your stake as a government servant is 4%, 96% is your stake as a citizen. And therefore, my submission is, there is just one side, the citizen side. What benefits citizens is bound to benefit all of us. There really cannot be two sides to this. It's just one side, and therefore, assuming now that we are probably a homogeneous lot now, let me ask you a simple question. 1947, 15th August, we got Swaraj, independence, and for a century before that, we struggled for this. Are we happy with the state of governance? Can I hear an answer? No. Anyone who says yes or Raj? Are you saying you do not like your own Raj? Is that the answer? We have Swaraj and we don't like our own Raj. Is that the answer? This confusion. I mean, how can it be that I don't like my own rule? My submission to you is, on 15th August 1947, Swaraj never came. It was a transfer of Raj from the whites to the browns. And we didn't really realize this. People say we are a democracy. How is this possible, Mr. Gandhi? We have a reasonably functioning democracy. Do vote, and we have a reasonable system of voting. We are able to throw out governments, change leaders, and so on. It's a reasonably fair system of voting. My submission to you is we have what I call an elective democracy, not a participatory democracy. Miss the heart and essence of democracy. So we have an elective democracy, we go and vote, we change governments, and after that we don't participate. The heart and essence of democracy I would submit to you is the concept that every individual citizen is a sovereign in her own right. And she gives up part of the sovereignty to the state in return for which she gets the rule of law. It's a negotiation of the individual sovereign citizen with the state. This somehow we've missed. We transformed into an elective democracy, rightly so. But this transformation into a participatory democracy was missing. And I would say that my belief in right to information is that this is the one tool that has the capability, the potential of changing the face of India from an elective democracy to a next stage, the participatory democracy. Having said that and tried to lay down why I have great faith and what happened in the last 15-20 days in Delhi and all across the country, I believe perhaps was ignited by this spark of right to information, slowly empowering citizens, making them feel that they have the right to say what they want, not just at elections but even in between. And this, I believe, will continue and keep spreading and increasing more and more. Having laid this down, now I'm going to try and put across the perspective of the Right to Information Act from the way I look at it. As Mr. Mundra mentioned, yes, 2nd December 1766 was the first Freedom of Information Act in the world in Sweden. This was primarily sponsored by a Finnish clergyman, Anders Chydenius. And some people have told me that, Mr. Gandhi, this concept of right to information is all right for developed countries. You know, most of the European countries and United States got its right to Freedom of Information Act in 1966. So people say this is all right for developed countries. For countries like us, this is not appropriate. Let me take you back, sir. 1766. Let's think of what 1766 means. In 1766, most of Europe was backward. India was the Sone ki chidiya. It was not Europe. My belief is that democracy is what led them to progress. We were monarchies at that time. And we continued, and then the British came. And until 1947, we continued with the British. We did not have a democracy. I genuinely believe that it was democracy that led the Western countries, because democracies evolved there. And that is what led to their progress, and that is what will lead to our own progress. Therefore, I believe right to information and democracy, a truly participatory democracy, is the foundation for a truly prosperous nation. Now, Anders, incidentally, is said to have been inspired by Confucian philosophy, which goes back to 5 BC. And what I found interesting in that is, Confucian philosophy was that even emperors must admit their mistakes. What is right to information? Why are people so scared of right to information? Because they feel it exposes something. I believe the moment your mistake is exposed, you have a chance of improving yourself. When you are evaluated in a paper, when a student gives a paper somewhere and he or she is evaluated, it gives the person a chance of understanding where the mistakes are, where the follies are, how you can improve. And therefore, as institutions, individuals and nations learn about their mistakes, accept their mistakes, I believe it's a process of improvement which sets in. When you don't admit your mistakes, mistakes will generally be pointed out by others. If I have a black mark here which I have picked up from a wall, I can't see it, but all of you can. And if you can, maybe you will tell me, Mr. Gandhi, you got a black mark here, maybe I can wipe it out. But otherwise, I don't have the chance of doing the preamble. The preamble of the RTI Act. The preamble is the soul of a law. It tells you what this law is all about. What does it say? Whereas the Constitution of India has established democratic republic, and whereas democracy requires an informed citizenry and transparency of information, which are vital to its functioning, and also to contain corruption and to hold governments and their instrumentalities accountable to the governed. And whereas revelation of information in actual practice is likely to conflict with other public interests, including efficient operations of the government, optimum use of limited fiscal resources, and the preservation of confidentiality of sensitive information, and whereas it is necessary to harmonize these conflicting interests while preserving the paramountcy of the democratic ideal. Arguments are made. Some people say we have to harmonize. My submission is the law harmonizes these conflicting interests. A nation lives on law. The rule of law is a negotiation which I believe each individual negotiates and gives part of the sovereignty to the state for. This law has harmonized these conflicting interests. After that, if we believe that there are flaws in the law, we will have to move to amend the law. But so long as this law is there, I think we need to strictly interpret the law in its spirit and letter. Information. Section 2F defines what is information means, any record, etc. In very simple terms, I define information as something that exists. It has to exist, then it's information. If it does not exist, it's not information. It's very common for citizens to ask, why have I not been promoted? Why has this not been done? What will you do in future? When will you become corruption free? So on and so forth. This is not information that's available on any record. The PIO is not expected to answer generating his own opinion or giving a clarification of a law. What, in simple terms, in most cases, what you are seeking is information which is available on records. Also, alternately, you can seek a sample of something that's done. That also exists. But you cannot ask for information which is not there. No PIO, I repeat, is expected to generate information or create information under right to information. Public authorities have been defined under section 2H. The critical issue on which there is a lot of discussion and debate and unnecessary litigation, if I may put it, is what is substantial finance. Is one thing that has been in the domain, and people say, well, this is substantial finance, that is people, in fact, just this morning somebody asked me, is a normal cooperative society a public authority? My answer is, a normal public authority is not, a normal cooperative housing society is not a public authority under the ITI Act, unless there is an administrator appointed by the Registrar of Societies, in which case it is under the control of government, of the appropriate government, or there may be some rare society which may be financed by government. I am not aware, but if there is such a society, then of course it's a public authority. However, a major discussion today in the country, and this is a cause of great concern and worry, are the public-private partnerships, the PPPs as they are called. PPPs, by definition, are a partnership of public, that is government, with private enterprises. And most of these usually have a 49% or 50% stake of the government. By definition, they are obviously public authorities. I mean, there can be no doubt about it. Unfortunately, we have what I submit is a dysfunctional judicial system in the country, to which we can trace a lot of our problems. What's happened is, people apply to public-private partnerships saying, please give us information. They say, we are not a public authority, we will not give you information. It comes to the commission. Most of the times, commissions rule that public authority and you will have to give information. They go to the court and get a stay. And as we are aware, in high courts and supreme courts, you can continue to spend at least 2 decades very easily before coming to any conclusion. And this is why, from the Central Commission in January of this year, we wrote to the Planning Commission. We said, please include this clause in your model agreement, saying that the moment you give a public-private partnership, when you sign that agreement, you understand that you are a public authority, because a considerable stake is from the government. And therefore, you will be subject to right to information. Unfortunately, the Planning Commission is not willing to do this. And I believe citizens and others will have to take this up, because in the next 10 to 15 years, as we are able to understand, a lot of public assets are going to be given up to these public-private partnerships. And if these are not open to right to information, then I think in their minds they are decided this is actually privatization, this is not public-private partnership, which is therefore a fraud on the country. And I would submit and say that all of us need to agitate about this, get the government to agree that public-private partnerships must come under the Right to Information Act.